Hi, and welcome to your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Today, I want to bring you a show that comes to us from Centobia, Mississippi. And as I've said so many times before, ladies and gentlemen, this show is meant to inform you and to educate you. And today, I want to do that just in case you have young children in your home. And this pertains to a law that is on the books in almost every state. But this is how you handle this particular law. Don't let what I'm about to tell you happen to you. Okay? Now, the story goes like this. In Centobia, Mississippi, a 10-year-old black child who urinated in a parking lot must serve 3 months probation and write a 2-page book report on the late NBA star Kobe Bryant, a Mississippi judge has ordered. Now let's get into this story. Tate County Youth Court Judge Rusty Harlow handed down the sentence Tuesday after the child's lawyer reached an agreement with a special prosecutor. The prosecution had threatened to upgrade the charge of child in need of supervision for a more serious charge of disorderly conduct if the boy's family took the case to trial, said Carlos Moore, the child's attorney. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we get into this, I have several issues with this particular case, all right? Now, let me tell you what led up to this. This boy's mother went to an appointment at an attorney's office. The child was left in the car while she went in to visit with an attorney. Now, the child was 10 years old. And I want to say one thing here. Once a child gets beyond the diaper stage, there's three things that you tell him, especially if he's a male. Now, you don't have to tell him this is a female, but if he's a male, the first thing you tell him is never wet your pants. Number one. Number two, never wet the bed. And number three, always raise the toilet seat when you go to pee in the toilet. Okay? Now, these three things are ingrained and embedded in a 10-year-old's head and mind. So here we have a 10-year-old sitting in the car while his mother is visiting an attorney. The child sees a sign on the door to the attorney's office that reads, "No public restroom." All right? Now, so this child, having embedded in his mind that if he pees his pants, and if he pees his pants sitting in the car, he's going to be in big trouble with his mother. So what does he do? Well, in this particular case, he does what any red-blooded American male would do, including your host. He went behind his mother's car and he opened one of the car doors to shield himself from anybody inside the attorney's office, and he began to urinate in the parking lot. Well, unfortunately for him, a police officer happened to be driving by and he witnessed this. So he immediately stopped his vehicle, approached the 10-year-old boy to begin to talk to him and tell him and inform him that he was violating the law by urinating in public. Now, here's problem number one that I have, and I want to explain this to you, and I want to inform you people and educate you. No public restroom does not apply when you are a client at an attorney's office or a patient at a doctor's office or a client or patient at any other private office. And if a 10-year-old child is accompanying you, whether or not you take that child into the office with you or not, that child is part of your appointment at either the doctor's office or an attorney's office. And that child is entitled to the restroom facilities in that office where you are a client or a patient. Okay? Don't get it wrong. No public restroom means somebody just walking in off the street and say, hey, can I use the restroom? Or do you have a restroom? They can refuse service to the public in that form, but they do not have the right to refuse service to somebody that is at an attorney's office or a doctor. Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, if you have an appointment with a doctor, more than likely you're going to be there for more than 15 or 20 minutes. You're likely to be there for 1 to 2 hours or maybe even more. So I don't buy this that they having themselves or somebody that's accompanying them having the right to utilize the restroom at that facility. Now that's number one. But now let me read on a little bit more. I'm going to tell you more about this. The child's mother has said that her son urinated behind her vehicle while she was visiting a lawyer's office in Senatobia, Mississippi on August the 10th. Police officers in the town of about 8,100 residents, which is 40 miles south of Memphis, Tennessee, saw the child urinating and arrested him. Officers put him in a squad car and took him to the police station. Now, let me just explain something to you, ladies and gentlemen. I will be the first one to tell you that yes, this is the law that's on the books. Urinating in public is a violation of an ordinance in almost every city in the United States. However, that law was never written and was never intended for a child, a 10-year-old child. And if there were to be any intervention on the part of a police officer, it should have been a mere warning to that youngster at least. And the other thing is, this certainly should not ever have reached the level of an arrest of a 10-year-old. Maybe writing a warning citation or even a violation citation, which could have been challenged. But to arrest a 10-year-old for urinating in public when he is in the presence, basically not in the presence, but he's accompanying his mother to her attorney's office. And he saw a sign on the door that said no public restrooms. Now, here's the other part that I have a problem. There are several parts here I have a problem with. But the other part is the original officer that saw this and witnessed this agreed not to arrest the young man. However, before he concluded, he was accompanied by what I guess they call it backup, of another 1 to 2 officers. So here's the problem I have. Here's a 10-year-old child who has urinated in public. You mean to tell me that even in Senatobia, Mississippi, that you would pull 2 other officers off of their beats where I'm sure they could find better things to do because I'm sure there's crime taking place in Senatobia just like it is anywhere else, but they will take 2 additional officers off their beat to come and assist an officer who's trained in how to handle this. And that's appropriate. That's an appropriate use of taxpayers' dollars. That's appropriate use of your police resources. So now you've got 3 people involved, 3 police officers at the scene of a 10-year-old urinating in public. I have problems with that. You see? Now, Centobia Police Chief Richard Sandler said the child was not handcuffed. I hope not. But his mother said he was put in a jail cell. Now, that's not juvenile justice. That's not a juvenile facility. That's the city jail or county jail, whatever you want to call it. It's a jail with criminals, adult criminals. A 10-year-old who simply had to release himself with no inside facilities available to him, at least he thought, and he did just what you or I, as a male, would do. I've done it myself, okay? When you have to go, you have to go. And if you don't see a public facility that has or offers a public restroom, ladies and gentlemen, you have no other choice. You've got to find some place that, and apparently he didn't find it nearby because a 10-year-old cannot wander 3 or 4 blocks down the street, whatever, and his mother's inside of an attorney's office visiting an attorney. So I have problems with the way this was handled all along. Now, a sergeant who was sent as backup made the decision after the original witnessing officer said, no, we're not going to arrest him. The sergeant said, oh, yeah, we are going to have to arrest him. We are going to have to take him to jail. He violated one of our ordinances. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got major problems with this. Now, I would think that if this officer was hell-bent on arresting this officer on a misdemeanor charge of public urination on a 10-year-old, I would think that the prosecutor would, in looking at this case, would refuse to press charges. But I would be wrong in this particular case. But you see, one thing I guess I'm forgetting is that this is in the state of Mississippi. And this young man happens to be an African-American male, okay? So the prosecutor presses charges. This kid goes before a judge after being arrested. And the judge says he will have to serve a probation, a 3-month probation, okay? And he, somewhere along the line, had expressed a love for the late, great Kobe Bryant. So the judge, sentenced as part of his probation, he had to write a 2-page letter, okay, to serve out his probation, okay? And he had, by the way, he had to report, okay, to the probation officer once each month. Now, that's something you expect from a criminal that had intentions of breaking the law. This child had no such intentions. But at the age of 10, he had no choice. All right? Now, let's get down to the bottom of the nitty-gritty. And to prove my point, the police chief of Senatobia, Mississippi, said that his officers violated their training and violated department policies in the way this was handled. Now, that alone should be reason for the prosecutor to dismiss the charges. But no, we can't do that. We cannot have 10-year-old African American boys urinating on our public streets and park. Matter of fact, this was a private parking lot. This was not city property. This was a private attorney's parking lot. The attorneys didn't press any charges because they didn't have to, I guess. Now, here's the bigger deal. After the attorneys for this young boy waited for the prosecutor to dismiss the charges, the prosecutor, rather than dismiss the charges, said that they would upgrade the charges to disorderly conduct if they decided to take it to trial. Now, this is a huge problem because, ladies and gentlemen, this is America. Okay? This is America. You have a right to take any criminal charge that is filed against you. You have a right to take it to court without the fear of any upgraded charges. You were originally charged with public urination. You can take that to court without having to worry about it being upgraded to this. You were never charged with disorderly conduct. You were charged with public urination. You have a right to go to trial. You have a right to, I don't care if it's a jaywalking ticket. I don't care if it's spitting on the sidewalk. I don't care what it is, if it's first-degree murder. You have a right to go to trial. Okay? Because let's face the facts. As this case proves, just because police officers file a charge doesn't mean they're right. And we've seen many cases that have been overturned, and judges and juries have found defendants not guilty after police and say they were guilty. So you have every right. And that's the information and the education I want to pass along to you. Number one, if you go to a private appointment at a doctor's office, at an attorney's office, at a accountant's office, hospital, I don't care what it is, that child that is accompanying you to that appointment has the right to utilize the restroom facilities at that office that you're visiting. Okay? They should never, ever have to be forced to go outside and go behind a building or on the side of a building behind a car to relieve themselves. Because most children don't have the ability to hold themselves like maybe you and I would. And let me just tell you, a lot of men, adult men, who are victims of enlarged prostates have the very same problem. When you gotta go, you gotta go. You don't have time to seek and search and seek out a facility that has a public restroom. So sometimes you have to relieve yourself in what we would consider unlawful situations by urinating in public. But we do our best when we have to do that because look, I've done it. We shield ourselves either through a corridor or a tree or whatever from basic public view if we can. But if you can't, ladies and gentlemen, you do what you have to do. And if you have to suffer the consequences, that's what you have to do. But this case, see, here it is right here. Days after the episode, the police chief said the officers violated their training on how to deal with children. He said one of the officers who took part in the arrest was no longer employed, and other officers would be disciplined. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's all you need to hear as a prosecutor to know that you have a duty and a responsibility and an obligation to dismiss the charges against this 10-year-old. You do not have the right to intimidate his parents with the unjustifiable action of upgrading the charges just because they choose to take the case to trial. It should never even get to that point. You should have the decency of a well-trained attorney, prosecutor to do the right thing. And the only right thing in this case would have been for you to serve the public in a respectful, fair manner and simply charge this one up to experience. Charge this one up not as an adult criminal who's exhibited criminal intent, but rather as a 10-year-old child who was simply doing what comes naturally. He had to relieve himself, and there was no public facility within his sight or in his environment. And he did what he had to do. He did what you would do. He did what I would do. And as this attorney said, there's never, as far as I know, I don't think there's a male in America who has not discreetly urinated in public. That's coming from the boy's attorney. And I agree with it. But they haven't been arrested. And even when it's been witnessed. See, you can come up, if you have an enlarged prostate, you can come up with a justifiable reason why you didn't have the time to seek out a facility, even though there might have been a facility right across the street. But sometimes you don't have, okay, that kind of time. Sometimes it sneaks up on you without warning, and you have to go. And certainly, if a 10-year-old has been conditioned and has planted and embedded in his mind, you don't pee in your pants. Certainly, a male, an adult male, has that deeply ingrained. And not only that, but he doesn't want to have the public humiliation and the embarrassment of walking around with wet pants from urinating in his pants. So he's going to do exactly what this young boy did. Okay? But there's a vast difference between a 10-year-old child and a 40, 50, 60-year-old man. Okay? Sometimes adults can hold it. Sometimes they can't. But one thing is for sure. Most times, children cannot. And you don't punish them. You don't humiliate them. You don't embarrass them by putting them in jail for what is nothing more than an unintended misdemeanor. That's not right. That's not fair. And that's not just. But you want me to tell you what it is? It's racism on the part of at least one of Senatobia's police officers, the sergeant who made this decision to overrule the officer that witnessed this by saying, yes, we do have to take him to jail. How many other 10-year-olds have you taken to jail, sir, for public urination? I doubt if the number is one. So why make this case any different? Why should I accept any other reason than he was a 10-year-old African American boy. Okay? And in Mississippi, that makes a big difference. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, remember this program is brought to you by Squeegee Squad. And Squeegee Squad is a professional, high-rise, multi-story, commercial window cleaning operation. And don't forget, they have a new service, gutter cleaning. And this is the time of the year when gutters need to be cleaned because leaves are falling out of the trees all over at this time of the year. And a lot of those leaves are falling right into your gutters and clogging up your gutters. And remember, clogged gutters can cause water to flow down onto the ground near your basement foundation. And if the ground is not shaped to have the water run away, it then runs back against your foundation, your concrete foundation. And after a period of time, your foundation begins to crack and suffers damage, water damage. And that's what allows water to seep into your basement. And those kind of repairs can be costly. Call Squeegee Squad today and get an estimate before it's too late. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for watching, and Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. And thank you for watching our programs throughout the year.